of medieval literature is. In his version, he ties Tristan. He ties the story of Tristan and Isolde directly into a larger frame story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So just to, refresh your memory, King Arthur, traditionally, he doesn't realize he's a king. He pulls a sword out of a stone. He is revealed to be the king. He rises to become the king of Camelot. He gets married. His wife is Guinevere. He has a round table, and in this version, the seats at this round table are called sieges, which is important to know for the story. And each siege has a name written on it in gold. And only the knight whose name is written in gold can sit in that siege. And there is a tradition in this version that every year at Pentecost, they listen to a story about a great deed or go on a quest, do a boon, that basically the knights assemble at Pentecost. So I'm gonna jump in. So this is the story of Sir Tristan and the fair Isolde. For many years after the founding of the Round Table, 2 sieges remained empty, besides the Siege Perilous. The other places might sometimes lack a name for a little while, as one knight or another was killed in some desperate battle or dangerous quest, but always there was another to take his place. But King Arthur knew that the 2 places by the Siege Perilous could not be filled so easily. These 2 places, the Siege Perilous, and one on either side of them, were for the 5 best knights in Logres. And for Logres, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's originally Welsh, I don't know. And for these alone, Gawain sat in one, and Lancelot in another to the right and to the left of the Siege Perilous. But not even Sir Gareth or Sir Bors might sit in the 2 empty seats. Now, upon a certain feast of Pentecost, when all the knights were gathered in Camelot, King Arthur spoke with Lancelot and Gawain concerning these 2 sieges. "There is one knight whose name I have heard tell of as greatest of any," said Gawain, "but to your court he has never been. He is a Cornish knight." Cornish means from Cornwall. "Cornish knight, nephew to Mark, who is king of Cornwall under your overlordship, and his name is Tristan of Lyonesse." "I met him once," said Lancelot. "He jousted with certain knights of the Round Table, Sir Lamorak and Sir Segramore, and overthrew them. Then he and I broke a lance together, and I will here avow him to be the best knight with whom I have ever yet have jousted." "We will send into Cornwall," said King Arthur, "and bid him come to our court. For sure am I that it is of him that Merlin spoke, saying that for a little space he should sit at our board and bring great glory to Logres. But here, methinks, begins the adventure of this day, about which we may not turn to the feast." For suddenly, as he spoke, they heard in the distance outside the hall the sweet, sad notes of a harp. And as they listened, the music drew nearer to them, music so sad and sweet that no man there had ever heard the like, nor might many restrain the tears from running down their cheeks. And then the minstrel came into the hall, a fine man, tall, broad, very noble to look upon, dark hair, dark eyes, and a dignity about him that might well have become a king. Yet he was poorly clad in such humble garments as that wandering minstrel wore. And when he had bowed to King Arthur, he took his seat on a stool near the door. "Come hither, good minstrel," said Arthur, when the magic of the music had a little faded from his heart, "and play to us once more, and sing of brave deeds, of noble knights and lovely ladies, for in them our heart delights. Whence come you?" Okay, and here we're going to pause just a minute to discuss this hilarious entrance of this minstrel. First of all, a minstrel is a wandering musician and a wandering entertainer. This is a very long tradition. It is found in many cultures. But an important thing to think about is that this story originally wouldn't have been read out of a book. I am reading to you out of a physical book. But when these stories are passed around, medieval Europe is mostly an oral culture. Most people couldn't read, first of all, and then written books would have been wildly, wildly expensive. So a lot of storytelling took place visually in tapestries and paintings, but also orally. So a singer going from place to place is an important kind of important for news telling, for storytelling, for entertainment, and this is a tradition that's found even today. Like I'm Mexican. Lady Splainy is Mexican, and my abuelito Exigio, he died before I was born, and one of the ways that I've always kind of tried to maintain a connection with him is to listen to songs that he loved, that I know he loved. And he loved corridos. I love corridos. And corridos are still sung in Mexico, and they're story songs. Like something will happen in a town, stories from the revolution, doomed love, somebody gets shot, whatever. Something happens in a town, it gets told in a story song or a corrido, and then that gets disseminated far and wide. And the fun of it is you can find multiple versions of the same story, right? So in my mom's hometown, there's a corrido of Arnulfo Gonzalez, and one of the things I'd love to do is to try and find different versions of it. So that is very much in keeping with this medieval framework that we're looking at right now. Here's King Arthur. He's a king. He's got his knights. And in comes this wandering storyteller or minstrel who is telling a story. And it's very circular because he's telling a story in very much the style that people originally enjoying the stories of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table would have heard theirs, right? It's kind of story within a story. And he has this hilariously Justin Bieber entrance, right? This minstrel comes in, he's good looking, he's got his harp, it describes, he's got these like raggedy clothes, but he's got all his stuff, his dark hair, this inherent dignity, right? And I also love this little touch here that Arthur is kind of wiping away the tears because his song playing is just so beautiful and so moving. Okay, so jumping back into the story, King Arthur has just asked him where he's from. Whence come you? From Cornwall, noble king, answered the minstrel. Have you heard tell of Sir Tristan of Lyonesse? Yea, noble Arthur, and him have I seen full often, said the minstrel, and his story will I tell to you, a sad tale and a true one, as ye shall hear. He took the wine that was offered to him in a great horn cup, drank to King Arthur, and sitting on a stool beside a great pillar, he began his lay, sometimes telling it as a story, and sometimes singing it to the sad, sweet music of the harp. So here is the story that the minstrel tells. The tale tells that in Lyonesse, a king lived and a queen. Very happily they dwelt together, until upon a day an enemy came into the land of Rivalen, that king to lay it waste with fire and sword. Rivalen went against him with all his men, but he was slain in battle, and Morgan the wicked ruled his land. And at that time Morgan made search for the queen, but she had fled into the forest with one faithful follower. And there in the forest, the follower's name is Rule, and I apologize. I think that is probably also a Cornish or Welsh name, and I just don't know how to pronounce it. And there in the forest, a child was born to the queen, and there she died and was buried. But before she died, she gave the child to Rule. Faith keeper, she said, keep faith now to your dead lord and to your lady who will soon be dead. Take my child and call him Tristan, for he was born in sorrow. Tend him carefully and guard him as your own son, that in a day to come he may avenge our deaths and rule once more in Lyonesse. And when he was a man, let him seek help of my brother, King Mark of Cornwall. Okay, we are barely on the second page, and already we've got King Arthur, we've got a minstrel, a distant king and queen who are murdered. Mother gives away the baby right after giving birth, but not before telling the random person she hands the baby to have the baby grow up, avenge her death, and then get his rightful place. That is a lot to happen in 2 pages, which is just so entertaining to me. But also it's worth noting, In Spanish, the word triste means sadness. It's sad. So his name, Tristan, there, I'm going to guess is coming from the Latin. It makes total sense. He's born in sorrow. Okay, so Rule took the boy, and never was child more kindly and lovingly fostered by his own parents than was Tristan by Rule and Rule's wife. And when he grew older, Corwin the Wise taught him many things, to play upon the harp, and to play at chess, to use a sword and spear, to ride a horse, and he took him through many foreign lands so that he might learn to speak their languages. So Tristan is getting this like top-notch childhood. He's learning all of the important skills, like foreign languages, learning to play a spear, learning to play chess, sword fighting. It's like all the important stuff. Hopefully your education is that good, but I just don't know with Betsy DeVos if everybody's getting a fair shot at jousting as an elective. Okay, when Tristan was a tall youth, it chanced that a ship of Norway came to Lyonesse to trade, and the merchant spoke well with Rule and was kindly entertained. I personally, based off of nothing, am going to decide that these are Vikings, because who else is coming from that part of the world? Seriously. And the merchant spoke with Rule and was kindly entertained, but ever he looked upon Tristan. And at last he invited Tristan to come aboard his ship and play at chess with him. And Tristan came, and he beat the merchant at every game. But while they played, the sailors drew up the anchor silently, hoisted the great white sails, and slipped out to sea, meaning to sell Tristan as a slave for much money. Okay, so now he has been kidnapped by these wily chess-playing Norwegian merchants, okay? One page after his dying mother told his baby self to avenge her death. A great storm arose, however, and for 9 nights and days drove the ship before it, and all aboard feared greatly for their lives. Then the sailors clamored, saying that a curse was upon them for stealing Tristan. And the merchant hearkened to them and set Tristan upon his shore to the nearest land they chanced to see. And it happened that this was Cornwall. And when Tristan was come to shore, the storm ceased and the sun smiled out again. In Cornwall, he soon came to King Mark's court at Tintagel, knowing not yet that Mark was his uncle, for still he believed that Rule was his real father. King Mark entertained the wanderer kindly, and Tristan served him so well that before long he rose to be the king's nearest and most trusted counselor. Then Rule came, seeking the wide world over for his lost fosterling, and he found Tristan with King Mark, and he saw that God had been working in these things. Okay, so there are shades of a couple of things. One, there's a strong element of coincidence and providence, right? Why is the merchant looking at him? Why are these Norwegians so interested in him? But the Norwegians kidnap him for reasons it's not super clear. They leave him on this random shore, and it turns out to be his long lost uncles. So that's just clearly, this last line, God had been working in these things. This is providence at play here. And, in the medieval world, the idea that there are greater forces at work in your life was really strong. Whether you want to call that providence, whether you want to refer to it as fate and destiny. We think of the Wheel of Fortune as a game show, but originally the Wheel of Fortune is very, very common, in medieval illustrations, that at any point, fate or destiny could either bring you to great heights or knock you down. And we've already seen this in Tristan's story. So that's something. This also has some biblical shades to it. If you're familiar with the story of Joseph from the Bible, he rises to become one of Pharaoh's most trusted counselor, but he comes as a foreigner, So there's some different elements in here. Okay. When Mark knew that Tristan was his own nephew, he made much of him, and the two dwelt there in happiness. For Mark sent his army under Tristan's charge into Lyonesse, and Morgan the wicked was slain. But Tristan set Rule to reign in Lyonesse, though he made it a part of Mark's kingdom, and himself he dwelt still at Tintagel. So here, in a different pace of story, that might be the whole thing, right? That here is this kid, doesn't know his own, his own origins. He finds out that he's a royal. He's reunited with the uncle. He avenges his parents' deaths, and he takes his rightful place. First of all, that has a lot of echoes of Arthur's story. Second of all, in a different, era of storytelling, that would have been the story. But here, that's just the backstory. Okay. On a day, Tristan came into the court and found there great sorrow and lamentation. And in the seat of honor sat a great dark man with a fierce face and mighty hands. And this was Sir Marhault of Ireland, who came from Gurman, Ireland's king, to demand tribute from Mark, whom he had once overcome in battle. And the tribute was that 30 lads of noble birth be sent into Ireland to become servants of the court, or else that a knight should do battle with Marhault and slay him. But no one would do battle, for never was there a stronger knight in the world than Marhault. Okay, I'm gonna tie in some little Game of Thrones in here. This is very much this is the Iron Islands. This is what's his face being sent to be brought up as a foster son with Ned Stark, but he's always really a son of the Iron Islands, right? If you lose in battle, that is one of the ways that you swear fealty, is you basically give up your son to be raised at somebody else's house. Also, children of royalty are being raised in other people's house to be fostered all the time. So it's not, necessarily always a punishment. So here's an element here. Game of Thrones kind of uses this element too. So what they're attempting to do is, get 30 Theon Greyjoys to be sent to be servants at the court. King Mark's not having that, right? And then Sir Marhault of Ireland, with no historical basis whatsoever, I am definitely picturing the Mountain. Okay, this is just a huge, huge guy, kind of unbeatable. So the two options here are that you send tribute in the form of lots of little Theon Greyjoys, or you send your guy to fight the Mountain. Nobody's going to fight the Mountain. Okay? All right. "Shame be to you all," cried Tristan. "Call you yourselves men, that you sell your own sons into slavery? But nephew, we may not do otherwise," said King Mark. "You can fight," cried Tristan. "Refuse to pay the tribute, do battle with Gurman, the Irish tyrant, or let a knight of yours fight and slay this boastful braggart Sir Marhault." But none dared to fight, and Marhault laughed in scorn. "I will fight with you, wild hound of Ireland," cried Tristan, and he struck Sir Marhault across the face with his glove so that there might be no drawing back with honor. Okay, now that I have Game of Thrones in my head, I am definitely seeing Jon Snow in this kind of emo, dark hair, dignity, I'll fight you, sort of scenario. Okay. The duel was to be upon a little island off the coast of Cornwall. With swords only were they to fight, and alone, with none to watch. Marhault came first in a little boat and moored it to the shore, but Tristan pushed out his own boat so that it drifted away. "What do you, insolent child?" growled Marhault. "You will need your boat when you want to run away from me." Okay. "Two men came living to this island," Tristan said simply. "Only one living man shall depart." That is my favorite line. I actually flubbed it because it's actually "one living man only shall depart," but it's still kind of a baller line. And then Marhault laughed and drew his sword. Tristan drew his also, and they fought all day, giving each other many sword blows. And Marhault wounded Tristan once, a deep gash in the thigh. "That shall be your death," he laughed, "for upon my sword is magic ointment, and there are few indeed who can heal the wound into which it comes." Then in a fury, Tristan rushed upon him, shouting, "Treacherous and ungentle knight, thus do I answer you." And he clave through Marhault's helmet and deep into Marhault's skull, and his sword chipped leaving a little piece in the wound. This is going to be important later. But Marhalt fell to the ground, stricken to death, and yielded himself to Tristan. And that evening the men of Ireland set him upon a ship and sailed sadly home to Dublin. And there Marhalt died, for all that his sister Queen Isolde could do. And she was skilled above all other women in the healing of wounds. But she drew out the broken chip of steel and kept it in a casket, swearing vengeance upon the striker of that blow. Okay, we are going to pause here. So at this moment, Tristan has defeated his enemy in, single combat, but he also is deeply wounded with a kind of magically poisonous infection. So he's at death's door. Next episode, we will continue and see what happens. All right, Lady Splaney out.